here, and we try to, of course, return those thumb drives to their rightful owner. If you don't have anything on your thumb drive that indicates that it belongs to you, I don't know to say, hey Ashley, I have your thumb drive. You're just like in a panic at some point, and maybe you're too embarrassed to ask me, or you don't think that you left it here, or what, but I have no idea to help you out. Or you could do like Allie did and leave your wallet in a camera bag. Really? Yeah, Roz has got your wallet. So that's why I asked that you guys do that. And it's not something that I hawk over. I used to be really mean and like take points away if students didn't do that, but I've decided it's not that important to me anymore. But it's a good practice for you guys to do that. All right, and now tangent 1. This is Pinterest. Someone was asking about it. It's great for visual inspiration. You don't have to follow me, but do check it out. Obviously for this class, the use that would be most appropriate would be photography, just looking at what other photographers are doing, looking for visual inspiration. I'm asking you guys with these assignments that you're doing, not just to turn in an assignment that meets technical requirements, but I'm hoping that you guys are going to try to begin to see the world a little bit differently and show me something other than what I would see if I'm just walking down the hall or something like that, okay? In fact, some of you guys are, because you just started turning in some of your shooting assignments, you're going to see that I'll say, when you turn this in, you did a great job technically with this, but what's going on in this photograph? Why is this a good use of shallow depth of field or deep depth of field? And then I'll put in a grade that you may not be happy with, and then you'll send me an email going, why, Jay, why? And I'll say, of course, I want you guys to push. I said this at the beginning of the class, some assignments I'm just looking for, like some of the assignments in the book, you're just following instructions. Hopefully you're getting there, so I'm looking at them fairly briefly, and I'm saying, okay, yes, that looks like it's supposed to look. They get the points for that. And then some of the assignments I'm looking at, and I'm grading a little bit with a little bit more scrutiny. And the shooting assignments I'm going to scrutinize a little bit more. And I am looking for you guys to wow me a little bit. So this is a great place to look for inspiration. I have a lot of photographers that I follow and designers as well, so there's all kinds of stuff here. And then if you do choose to follow me, I have this photography I admire board, which is just I just keep things there that I think is fun stuff, interesting stuff. And I'll sometimes bring these up in class to talk about just in reference to whatever assignment you guys have. Once we get into composition, we'll be focusing on different areas of composition. I might bring some of these photographs up and have you guys analyze those photographs. Am I good to go back there? Okay, good. And you have the social, oh, you're not looking at the social stream. You do have it? Okay, cool. Yep. One of the online students requested that we pay attention so that if they ask questions that I can answer them. So I'm going for it. I'm trying it. Anyway, really fun thing, really good stuff. In fact, this is an example of what we'll be looking at in a couple of weeks. This would be, in 2 weeks, you guys are going to be doing a slow shutter speed. And this would be an example of what you could do with slow shutter speed, is that you could actually do some light painting is what we call this. So that's really fun, where you'll actually, you open the shutter on a camera for an extended period of time and then you paint with light.
I've been trying to figure this out because I do the movie dance.
And this would be really fun for that. That would be really fun for that. When my kids were growing up, every time they had sparklers, I'm like, I'm doing the, the extended shutter speed thing. So that's one resource. And then somebody else asked about Symbaloo and what that is, and so I thought I'd show you this. It's basically, you can create collections of bookmarks. And so if you look at the tabs up across the top, those are what are called web mixes. So you can create web mixes that have to do with a specific area of interest that you have. And so I have Jay's web mixes, AAU. AAU is because I'm taking classes online, so that's stuff I've saved for that. Media links, photography, design inspiration, web design, marketing, Flash and ActionScript, LCCC resources, usability. And if I go to any of those, let's do photography inspiration, or photography here. then you can see these are all kinds of bookmarks that I've created that have to do with photography in one way or another. And some of them are, galleries. Some of them are websites. This is a site called Cambridge in Color that I really like. It's a little technical, so it's a little heavy for beginners. But the guy who keeps this site is very, very good and discusses some pretty heavy photography topics. Some of them are just, great galleries that I've seen. So this must be something. Actually, this is just the little Time light box. Time keeps it's like a photo blog. And so this is just a link to a photo blog. So this is, I know I look at this every once in a while, and that will remind me to go, check some of these resources out. Or sometimes when I'm looking for something in particular, a solution to a particular problem that I'm having, I want to do this with ActionScript. I can't quite remember, a good way to do this. Maybe I'll go look at my resources and see what I have, kind of thing. So, and I'm pretty sure I put a handout for Symbaloo up on the angel shell. Bless you, Aaron. And if you can't find that and you're interested in that, let me know, because I did create a handout, and I can actually print it and give it to you. I just like saying handout because I don't print anything out. So, what's that? Oh, well, great. I'm glad you were paying attention to what I had to say in class then. And then you waited until I talked about what was on the quiz before you took the quiz.
No, I did it
well done. Oh, well, that's even better, usually. All right. So, now that we had our comic relief, where we are, of course, today, you should have turned in the music store file, the outlawed fraud file, and then your depth of field photos. Hopefully you guys did fairly well with that. Let me know if you're struggling with anything on that, and I'll talk to you about that. I did have some people already come and talk to me about that. And I'm trying to evaluate those as quickly as possible so you guys are getting that feedback. I try to give you guys feedback as quickly as possible, so that way if there's an opportunity to avoid making the same mistake twice, we can. Today we're going to talk about a few issues. We're going to do a lot more hands-on today. So actually probably going to be on the computers quite a bit. But before we get onto the computers and start looking at selections, we're going to talk about some more image what's the term I'm looking for here? Well, just some topics that have to do with image size and the different issues that we're going to see with image size. We talked a little bit about this, but we're going to get a little more in depth with resizing images today. We're going to talk about the different color modes that we have. We'll touch on color correction. Why color correction is important. Color calibration more specifically, and then we're going to talk about bridge. You guys have looked at bridge, but unfortunately, probably kind of looked at it with just kind of this cursory glance and thought, well, what the hell is that for? So we're going to talk about what the hell that's for today, and hopefully you guys will be as excited about it as I am by the time we're done. And then, of course, talking about selections. So resizing, resampling. We talked a little bit about what can possibly happen when we have an image. We talked last week about when you capture an image, you want to make sure you capture the image at the size, at least at the size that you want to output that image. So, and we talked about what's possible, what's going to happen if you want to increase the size of an image after you've captured. You want to increase the size of the image to a size that you don't actually have that much information, because of course we only have a certain number of pixels. So then we have these two different things that can possibly happen. We have resizing and we have resampling. These are the two things that are potentially going to happen when we increase the size of these images. We talked about this a little bit last week, so I'll ask you guys to give you the answer to this. So how does how much does resolution affect our ability to resize an image? We talked about one of the possible things that can happen, that can go wrong. What was that thing that we talked about?
There's only so many pixels in
Okay, so what happens to the pixels?
they get bigger, so
Yeah, it gets fuzzy, they become visible, they get bigger. We essentially are taking something that, a little rectangle, and we're making it into a big rectangle. So if we resize it enough, we begin to actually see the pixels. So there's some degradation of quality. And that's what we call resizing. So and that's why we talked about last week, that we have the amount of information that we have. The resolution is what it is. And we always want to capture at the resolution that we need or higher. So whatever, and for the most part, people aren't really changing the size, the quality of their images in their camera. More where I'm seeing this is, of course, when we're capturing other types of documents with like a scanner. So we understand that we need to, of course, have as much information as we possibly can have, and that if we want to increase the size of something, there is going to be some downside to that, some negatives. Resizing is the first thing we talked about. We increase the size of the pixels. It gets jagged. It gets fuzzy. That's the problem with that. We also do have this other option, which always sounds really magical to people at first, and that's called resampling. And the reason why I like to talk about this is because it's absolutely possible to increase the size of your images in Photoshop. You can do that. And so when I tell people that you can't actually do that, that the image size is what it is, I get people with these kind of incredulous looks on their faces if they've played with Photoshop before. Because we can actually tell the computer, I want this image that once had a width of 400 pixels to now have a width of 2,000 pixels to now have a width of 4,000 pixels. I can do that. The computer will listen to me. But the problem is how it's going to create those pixels. We're asking the computer to essentially invent this information. And that's not going to have as good a result as you might think. What will happen in the event that we do this? This is called, this is called resampling. We're not just taking an image that has 2,000 pixels and we're making the 2,000 pixels larger. We're actually taking the 2,000 pixels and we're telling the computer we want to turn it into more pixels. This is called resampling. When we resample the image, Photoshop is going to use this method called interpolation to create the new pixels. And this is where the problem arises. What interpolation is it's this method by which I said that, the computer is going to invent this new information. The computer is going to take, for instance, we're going to say we have 2 pixels right next to each other, and one pixel is black, one pixel is white. The computer is going to take those 2 pixels, it's going to move them apart. It's going to invent a new pixel in between those 2 pixels, and it's going to give that new pixel an average color between the other 2 pixels. So, and like I said, this sounds incredible. This sounds really wonderful. We think, well, what could possibly be the problem with that? It made new pixels. It made the image bigger. The problem with this is understanding some other things about digital imaging or photographs, on a larger scale, and that is the detail of an image actually exists in the contrast of the image. So when we resample an image, when we use interpolation to create new pixels, the downfall is what? What's that?
Does the shading
go
away? Like it looks
well,
like 2D instead of 3D?
it's not so much that it looks 2D. Well, I guess you kind of do get a little posterization. It does kind of lose a little bit of the depth. Okay, I just gave you the example of a black pixel next to a white pixel, and that it splits, and we create a new pixel that's in between, and it's an average of those 2 pixels. What color is that pixel going to be?
Gray.
It's going to be a middle gray. Okay, and we also talked about how the details of a photograph exist in the contrast. So if I add all of these average pixels all over this image, what effectively am I doing to the contrast of the image? Yeah, I'm taking away the contrast to the image. The images will look soft or fuzzy. And you know, in some cases this is okay. Some people will do this, and for certain situations, they may think that, you know, that kind of loss in quality is something that they can live with, and that's fine. But you need to understand what it is that you're actually doing. This is not this magical algorithm that Adobe has created that now takes your, you know, 10 megapixel camera and gives you the capability to make infinitely sized images. When we increase the size of these images, they're going to get softer and softer and softer because it's inventing that information, it's averaging those pixels out, and we then are going to lose all contrast. So, you know, things like, you know, the eye. You know, we take a portrait. The eyes are terribly important. Contrast is important. Sharpness in the eyes are important. If we decrease the contrast, you know, those images aren't going to have the same pop. They're not going to look as attractive.
That would be terrible if, like, between the whites of your eye and, like, your iris, all of a sudden there's a bunch of gray.
And that's what happens. You end up with, like, these very soft areas if you enlarge it enough. Now, on a small scale, you can get away with this. And there are certain applications where you might think that that's okay. I mean, there are certain types of, you know, again, to use the example of portrait photography, where we create these images and we actually purposely soften them. We want to make them look ethereal. So there are certain situations in which we can get away with that. But we have to be very careful with it. And again, it's not magic. It's not good magic anyway. It's bad magic. Color models. We're going to see two color models in this class. And you've already looked at this in the textbook already, and hopefully, so this shouldn't be completely new to you. For the most part, we're going to be working in RGB, but you do need to be aware of this other model called CMYK. The other reason we're going to need to understand both these color models is because I'm going to ask you to work in both as we get later into the class. So RGB stands for red, green, blue. RGB is visible light color. You know, the light that we see in this room, it has a color to it. You know, the monitors, the projectors, these are RGB devices. These, you know, project a, you know, light of particular colors in combination to give us the image. You know, our cameras are RGB devices. Scanners are RGB devices. So RGB is, this is a measurement of light. When we output images for the web, because that is going to be, of course, then seen on a computer screen or a cell phone, this is also going to be RGB. In fact, if you try to put a CMYK image onto the internet, weird stuff happens if it allows you to see it at all. CMYK is a pigment model. It is actual ink. Okay, we take 4 different colors of ink, we add those inks together, it gives us the full range of colors. This is all going to be output devices, always. This is not, this is, you know, RGB is digital, CMYK is ink, or digital and actual light. CMYK is going to be things like the color printer over there, the inkjet printer back here, a printing press if you work with someone commercially. You'll sometimes see printers, inkjet printers that boast RGB color. They don't actually have RGB ink. They just have additional cyan, yellow, magenta inks. The printer that we have back there, we have an Epson, and it produces some additional color that you wouldn't typically see in just a standard CMYK printing process. And what it does to accomplish that is, instead of just having 4 inks, it has 8 inks, I believe. It's got cyan, light cyan, magenta, light magenta, black, and then I'm not sure what the other, there is some kind of light black, but I don't think they call it black. Yeah, and then yellow, and then I'm trying to think, maybe it only has 7. And there's other printers that you'll see that they'll have like a gloss cartridge. You know, so as a printer becomes more capable to print additional colors, they're just adding different variations of inks to it. Same thing with printing presses. You know, a 4-color printing press, there's a limitation to how much color it can actually create. What, you know, vibrances, what richness of color that it can create. But then, of course, we see these magazines that have these incredibly vibrant, neon, bright colors. They're introducing additional inks to the process to do that. So any output process is always going to be CMYK, even if they try to, you know, if it is advertised as, you know, RGB color. Another area where this is going to become important is this thing called Gamut. Gamut is refers to the range of color that can be produced by any particular model. The gamut that color can run. This is a visual representation of how some of these gamuts compare, how these different color models, the gamuts of these color models compare. And of course, it is a visual representation. It's not it's not 100% accurate, because the first thing that we have here is, of course, all of the different colors that are available through the visible spectrum, and that it actually shows some additional outside of that, but of course that's not possible because we wouldn't actually be able to see that. So still just a visual representation. We then have wide gamut RGB, Adobe RGB, and then sRGB, and there's lines that represent those different color models. I stopped on sRGB because that's actually the standard. That's what Photoshop is going to use. That's most likely what your camera is capturing, unless you have somehow gotten in there and told your camera to capture something else. So that is the standard RGB color space. Let's see, if we look at the visual representation here, this black line right here, so noticeably less than the visible spectrum. Why that's important? There's all kinds of things that are going to happen with digital photography that might have been, you know, confusing and enigmatic. One of which is, you know, how many guys have taken a photograph of like a rainbow or a sunset, and you then get home and you look at the photograph that your camera has taken, and it doesn't actually have all the color that you remember in your mind's eye.
It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of a bummer. You're like, oh, that's not what that looked like. Well, this is why. Your camera can't actually capture all of the color that you see. There's some limitations there. Another reason why it's kind of interesting to look at this whole sRGB versus the visible spectrum thing is that because it may help you understand some of the modes, the scene modes on your cameras. How many of you guys have a sunset mode on your camera? Or, you know, I'm trying to think of some other modes that might correlate. You know, sunrise, sunset. That's not what I'm looking for. There's certain modes, and the reason why I brought the sunrise, sunset. What's that? That's going to be more for bright, to deal with brightness. The reason why I brought up the sunrise sunset is because one of the things that happens with the sunrise sunset mode is that it bumps up your saturation. And the camera is compensating for the fact that you're not going to see the same color that you saw when you took the photograph. So it's going to increase the saturation in the image purposely to try and, you know, compensate for that. And there are other modes on your camera, and if you look through the scene modes, you know, it'll say, you know, increased vibrance, increased saturation. You know, it'll actually tell you which of those modes are doing that. And then increasingly, it's getting better, but some of the consumer level cameras, more accessible cameras, their sensors, they just start picking up more saturation. They kind of oversaturate images. They tend to anyway. You got a question?
A comment, really.
Okay.
I was driving with my mom in Arizona, and I was taking pictures of the lakes and like the mountains behind the lakes. And then I looked at my picture, and it was so much more red than what I saw, but it was at sunset. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty fascinating. The pictures were beautiful, mm-hmm. but it was way prettier than what I saw.
And that could be where the camera actually was oversaturating the image. So that's why it might not look exactly like what you would. Red. Yeah. The other thing that we need to understand about our color modes that we are potentially going to be working with is that the CMYK down here at the bottom, if you look at that line, it actually falls within sRGB a bit in some areas. What this means is if we are going to output an image to a a printing process, not to a screen, but to a printing process, we're actually going to lose some vibrance, some saturation of color in certain areas. And you'll actually, in some cases, it's actually noticeable when you convert the image from RGB to CMYK. And just like, of course, when you post images on the web, they need to be in the RGB mode. When you send images to printing press, you need to change the images to CMYK because bad things happen if you don't there as well. In fact, what in most cases will happen is you'll get just a grayscale image as opposed to the full color image. It is a bummer. It's terrible when that happens. As a designer, you feel like a failure. All kinds of terrible things that happen. All right. Bridge, ratings and color. Okay, this is why you should be excited about Bridge. I'm gonna do a demo and show you guys why I think you should be excited about Bridge. I have Bridge up, and I'm trying to do this backwards so that this is actually on the webcast so they can see it. Okay, so there's a few different ways I'm talking about here that you can organize, use Bridge to organize images more effectively than your standard Windows Explorer. The first way that we can organize our photographs are these things called color coding and then ratings. So color coding, and then we can actually do this through going to Label, and they're down here at the bottom. It says Select, Second, Approve, Review, To Do, and let me explain why it says that. It used to be in previous versions that it just said green, yellow, red, like purple, blue. I can't remember all the colors that it actually has, but I think those are pretty close to what it is. But they've changed it now to this method. And I guess what they're trying to encourage people to do with this is that you can use the color labels as a way to indicate where in the process a particular photograph might be. So if you have a photograph that you like, you may actually be able to just give it the the Control-6 is the shortcut, or use the label menu to actually put that red label on there. So now you're just indicating I am selecting this photograph. So then maybe somewhere down the road, someone will approve, review, whatever on these images. Now, if that doesn't make sense to you, and it doesn't necessarily make, I don't think it makes sense. I like the old method. You can actually change that, because it just. In fact, most people, if they stumble upon this, go to Label, and it says Select, Second, Approve, Review, they're probably not even going to get that. If you go to Edit and Preferences, there's actually an area in there where you can tell it what you want those to read. So you could actually go in there and tell it you just wanted to read red, yellow, green, cyan, purple. Now, okay, here's the why I care part, because you guys are like, okay, he just talked on and on and on, and I don't care about anything that he just said. So let's talk about the cool part here. This is why this is cool. So I have all of these images here that I took on a trip some time back. And let's say I'm going to go to the top, and I'm just going to hit a couple of these. I'm going to hit Control-6 on the keyboard on a couple of these images that I like. Oh. Now, I walk away from the computer, I'm doing something else, and then, my boss or whomever comes and says, did you download those photos you took from your trip to XYZ the other day? Oh, yeah, I did. And did you look at them and see which ones you like? Oh, yeah, sure, I did. Instead of going through each image and going, no, that's not it. That's not the one. That's not it. I can come over here to my filter panel and click the select, and now Bridge is going to sort the images based on the labels that I put on them. So I can tell it, I only want to see the images that I've labeled with this select, or if I want to change it to red, I can say red. And then later on, if I open one of these images up and I color correct it and I retouch it, I can then change the color to green to indicate that this photo is ready to go. Which, if you can see that, not only is this helpful for me organizing, but what if I'm working in a team environment? I can easily indicate to other people that I'm working with that I have worked on and approved this image. It's ready to be posted or placed in a document. Okay, so this is one of the ways that we can organize images, just with these labels. In addition to that, we have the ratings. Excuse me, click that again. So we have control 6, 7, 8, 9 are going to give us those color labels. Control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is going to put star ratings on photographs. So again, I could do the same thing. We might use the color labels to indicate where we are in the process with an image. We've selected that image, we've color corrected that image, we've converted it to CMYK, it's 100% ready to go. We can use the rating system just to indicate whether or not we like the images. This could be something we do early on. And let me play with this workspace a little bit more. I can start at this first one. I can move these panels just by putting my cursor on the line in between, and it becomes a little double-edged arrow. So I can kind of just key through with my arrow key on my keyboard on the images. Let's say I like that image. I'm going to give it 3 stars. So I just press Control 3. I can also, on the image there, I can actually just click on the little dots. Well, actually, I should be able to do it there. Now maybe I have to actually be in the slideshow mode, which I'll show you in a second. So I can, key through the images. This is also handy for, if I'm working with a customer. I hate when I take a whole bunch of photographs and then someone wants to look at them with me and pick them out. So what I'll do is I'll actually put them in Bridge and put it on this next thing I was going to show you, the slideshow mode, and actually have them go through the images. The couple of things about slideshow mode that are really nice. One, it gives you a full screen view. 2, you don't have to press Control to put the ratings on it. You can just press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I go to View, let's see, slideshow, I can choose I can do options, and that'll tell me how many, seconds, duration, whatever, whether or not I want to repeat it. I'll just go ahead and press play. Now it goes full screen, and I can just wait for it to toggle through. It's just going to play like an animated slideshow, or I can hit the arrow keys. Let's say, oh wait, I gotta go back. That's a cute puppy picture. There we go. And then I press 4. It shows that it's rated as a 4. Find one that has my son in it. Oh, there we go. He's got a big grin on his face. I like that one. So I can just go through the images. Oh, man. That's cute. She's much bigger, and she's still cute, but she's really, really hairy now.
She a dry mouth?
Yeah, she is actually. We're pretty lucky in that respect. When we discovered that, I was pretty amazed.
There's a huge difference between wet and dry.
For those of you who don't know much about St. Bernards, there's dry mouth and there's wet mouth, and the vast majority are actually wet mouth. And you can't tell when they're puppies. It's just basically like you luck out. It's like, they get to a certain point and they're either like excessively salivating or they're not. And so we lucked out. Ours is a dry mouth. So we don't have nasty like shoestring stuff going on like in the movies, thank God. So anyway, I can, do this. Oh, there we go. She's playing with the other dog. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so I won't make you guys go through the entire thing with me. Again, I can sort by that. You can see over here in the filters, it says no rating, 3 stars, and it tells me even how many images I have, 4 stars, and how many images there are. So I can select that, and it shows me just those images now. I also can do, like this over here, you can do show 1 or more stars. So if I do 5 stars, whoop, What did I just do? Oh, I think I must have. Did I have show 5 stars? Oh, I don't have any 5 stars. Oh, okay, that's why. Okay, so 5 stars, it's not going to show me anything. I can then say, okay, 4 more stars. Now it's going to show me those images. If I don't like anything there, I go down to 3 or more stars. It just keeps on adding. So that's a good way to do that. I thought I had made some of those 5 stars. So a couple of different ways that we can actually search that, and that's really handy as well. We can actually do these in conjunction with one another, which I think is really handy as well. So let's say, you know, I've gone through and I've done some star rating, and now somebody else has gone through and they're looking at the images. So clear the filter, and they've actually done. They've looked at these images, and they found these images that they liked. If in the event they found an image that they liked and I liked the same image, let's say I put a star rating on that one as well, I can filter by both. I can tell it I want the red label, which is what I have right here, and the star rating. So with both of those selected, I now only see the images that have a red label and a 4-star rating. So you can kind of like cross-check images that way. So those are both pretty handy as well. So that by itself, really fantastic. Love both of those features. I use the star rating more than I use the color labels. The color labels are more for process for me. That's how I end up using them, which is I think what they're trying to encourage, obviously, with what you saw there. So the star rating, when I'm just going through photographs just to decide what I like, that's what I use first. In addition to that, we have a couple of other ways that we can use a bridge to organize photos, or our photos more quickly, far more quickly than Windows Explorer. I love this next feature. I cannot tell you how much I love this feature. It is amazing. Truly, it is amazing. So when you get your photos out of your camera, what are the file names?
Numbers.
Yeah.
IMG underscore a big number.
Yeah, exactly. IMG underscore and some number. Okay. How much does that help you in organizing your photographs? Okay, so how do you change that? What if you want to change all of the file names on your photos to represent what they really are?
Rename.
You got to rename them. How do you rename them?
You click on it and then wait for it to have it again, and then you can edit.
Yes, you click on it and then you wait for a second. Then you click on it again. Can't click too fast because it'll open the image.
Or you can right click and then
Or you can right click and then you just do it over and over again. Although I did find, this is really cool, in Windows Explorer, if you press Tab, it goes to the next file, unless you rename that, which I thought was really cool. But that still cannot beat this. Batch rename in Bridge is incredible. Oh, wrong one. Oh, the wrong one. There we go. How it did it anyway. Okay, I'm trying to do this like, oh, I still did it.
Yeah, click on
Unbelievable.
bridge
There we
first.
go. Okay. Okay. So let's say I now want to organize these photographs by name. So I can select the file and then click again and rename each one of them individually. Or I can select all of them. I just held Shift and clicked on the end. Right click and tell it I want to batch rename, and then I get this dialog. This dialog is amazing. Okay, these pictures are pictures of my Aunt Barb harvesting potatoes at Miller Farm, it's like 5 years ago now. So I'm going to put new file name. I'm going to change this to Barb Miller Farms, and then underscore, and then I can add and delete fields you can see here. And I'm just going to use a sequence number. I'm going to start it with 1. I don't actually need 4 digits. I'm just going to do 2 digits. And then I'm going to click rename. And Bridge Lickety Split has now renamed all those files. And now I can do it to the next one. Select all these. Batch rename. And there's let me show you some of these other ways that you can use. I'm just using text and sequence number. You can have Current file name, preserved file name, sequence letter, date time, folder name, string substitution. There's all kinds of different ways that you can do this. Typically, I'm just using text and the sequence number. But let's do, now this is, I'll just call this old barn. And I'll use 2 digits and I'll reset it to 1. Rename. And I can just go through and rename all those, and they'll then have a name that is actually, good in context with what I'm trying to do. Now for this, these are just some personal photos that I took when me and my family were on a trip to Miller Farms. But there are other situations in which it's even going to be more critical. This is how many photographs I take when I go to Miller. Well, they're not all Miller Farms, but I mean you can see a lot of these are farm photos. Or, actually you can see you learn a lot about me here. We have farm. It's not good enough to get 1 picture of my aunt picking potatoes. I need 10. Yeah. And it's not enough to have 1 photograph of my son playing with the dogs in the front yard. I gotta have 50, 60. And then, my niece and my son, and then my son, look at him being a goof. He's such a funny kid. I should post that on his Facebook. He's 16 now. Do you think he'd appreciate that? No?
I think he'd love it.
Yeah. But I mean, here we go. My niece Grace eating a tomato. 1 photo or 18? You tell me. Okay, so this is just like me taking pictures just for fun. Now let's consider that we're shooting something that actually matters. I've done this project a few times now. I do sports cards for the Collegiate Summer League team, the Grizzlies. You guys familiar with the Grizzlies? You should go check it out. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, one of the reasons why I got into media, now you get to learn something else interesting about me, is because when I was a kid, I loved baseball, and I wasn't much of a player, but I had this huge sports card collection, which I still have. But it's now my son's. It's taking up maybe 10% of my garage at this point, plus part of his bedroom. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Literally, I got there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 80,000 of them in there. It's ridiculous. So anyway, that's how I got into media. I loved sports cards, and so when I went into the newspaper and the yearbook when I was in high school, it was because I wanted to be a photographer for Tops or Upper Deck or something like that. So this project appeals to me. I finally got to live my dream. I shot and designed and created sports cards for these collegiate baseball teams. When I go and shoot these projects, there's 20-some players on the team, plus a couple of coaches, the trainer, the mascot, the bat boy. We do a team card. This last year, for some reason, we did the sports announcer. We did a card for him. So there's 30 people. There's 30 cards we're doing for this. And you don't want to just get I'm just okay, I'm gonna take 1 shot. Okay, we're good. Get out of here. We're good. Okay, I've taken 30 photographs. I'm good to go. All right? No, it doesn't work that way. When I did this last summer, I actually hired 4 students to help me shoot. So there were 5 photographers. And so I may be looking for people next year. We'll see. And it's a paying gig. YDOT gives me money to pay to the students, so that's awesome. So I had 5 photographers when I did this last time. By the time I'm to the end of this project, just shooting the project, there's 2,000 photographs at least. I mean, we've taken so many shots of each player. We're taking photos of the pitcher's pitching. We're doing mug shots for the back of the card. We're doing fielding. We're doing batting. We're doing all kinds of different positional situations. And so it's ridiculous. So organizing, just after you have gone through that, you have 2,000 some odd photographs. You now need to pick 60 that are actually going to be used. How the hell do you do that? And you got 4 photographers, and everything's DSC _0145. you know, how do you do this? It takes lots of organization. So I'm using things like ratings. I'm using things like color labels. I'm doing batch rename like crazy. It usually takes me an entire day just to organize the photographs after we shoot. The other thing that we do, and I really like this because this is probably the fastest method that I have to show you guys today as far as organizing, is stacking. Stacking photographs in Bridge is pretty darn slick. With stacking, we can actually take several photographs and of course then create a stack from them. We can group them. Now this only works in Bridge. You can only see it in Bridge, but it is pretty darn useful. So let's see this group here. So I have this group of photos of my niece eating tomatoes. I select it. This is why this is so slick and so awesome. All I have to do is press Control-G on the keyboard. And now I have a stack of photographs that are, so all the photographs that are similar, I can select them, I press Control-G on the keyboard, they are stacked into one little group. And it tells me that they're stacked because the visual representation is a little bit different, and then it also tells me how many photographs are in that stack. When I want to see the photographs in that stack, I click on the little 18. It expands the stack. I can now see all the photos in that stack. If I want to collapse it, click it again. Really quick way to organize photographs. Of course, it only works in Bridge, so you have to have Bridge.
How do you change the thumbnail size of the pictures you're viewing on the left there?
I'm sorry, so change the what?
The thumbnail size?
Oh, on the left.
Yeah, because
Oh, okay. The question was how to change the size of the thumbnails. You see this slider down here at the bottom? And there's a little tiny square on the left. And there's a big square on the right. and you have to say it like that. When you explain this to someone, you have to make the voices. So you can just grab the slider in between. And sometimes when I'm going through photographs, I don't actually use that preview window. I'll actually just increase the thumbnail size to like something like that, and then I can see larger representations and go through a lot faster, and that's kind of handy. So there's all kinds of, this is the really great thing about, you know, these products, is that there's so many different ways that you can interact with it. I mean, they're really robust programs.
How do I start with a Mac? It's not working.
Command-G? Come on. Did I really have to explain that? Anytime I say control and I'm on a PC, it means command on a Mac. Okay. I'm just glad that we don't have to use the Apple key anymore. Open Apple, close Apple, you know, HG reset. I don't even know when they got rid of those. Because I was on Macs in like, you know, 98, 99, 2000. And then I was off of Macs until about a year ago. When did they get rid of the... I mean, I know you still have Apple keys, but they're not as critical anymore. It used to be that was like, you didn't like hold Alt and something, it was Open Apple and something. You know, it was really silly. Oh, right then.
Well, that's when we started like putting out all the new products.
Okay. Well, I'm really glad they got rid of that, because that was just silly. I don't understand we have to have a control and a command button too. I still don't get that. All right. And then of course, because we're going to screw up our Bridge window, if you can reset the workspace just like you do in Photoshop if you need to. So I've been messing with this. Typically, I don't look at favorites. I'll actually click on folders, and then I get rid of that entirely so I can see the internal file structure of my computer, which makes much more sense than anything else to me. This is actually, coincidentally, one of the reasons why I'm not terribly excited about Lightroom. And in Photoshop Elements, they have something called the organizer. And it bothers me that you have to create catalogs. I just want it to recognize my computer's file structure. I don't think that we should have to do that. Anyway, but if I am working through the book and I have any kind of issue because I've screwed with my workspace, just go and tell it to reset. And then there we go. Now it looks like it would in the very beginning. All right. Where am I? Okay, I'm back. I'm goofy here. I believe it is break time. All right, so let's take about a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back. And for the people who may or may not be watching online, did we get any comments?
Just wanted to know if you'd gone over the assignment yet, when the broadcasting starts.
All right, well, the broadcasting started about 1 o'clock. I don't know which assignment they're asking about.
Neither do I. I asked whether it was the depth of field or the shutter speed exercise, and
They didn't respond?
they haven't responded back
Okay.
yet.
Type in that they should email me about that. Thank you. All right, and then I'll...
Or they
and then,
heard you on the broadcast.
oh, yeah. And then you can go
Pause
ahead
it.
and stop it. And tell me when you're stopped, and then I'll turn this off.